Earn a 2.5% commission that's hundreds or even thousands of dollars when you take 2 minutes to make an introduction to Pipeline through our Ambassador program. All of the free content Pipeline brings to the engineering community, the Being an Engineer podcast, the Wave, our free online platform for engineers, and our CAD Club volunteer organization for aspiring young engineers, is possible because Pipeline exists. By making just one introduction, you can support Pipeline's core business and in so doing, support the aforementioned initiatives we provide that enrich the entire engineering community. Start making an impact today at teampipeline.us/ambassador. That's teampipeline.us/ambassador.
Wednesday, we get a letter from our largest customer that one of our projects that's been struggling has been rejected and that we owe them $1 million.
Oh. Hello and welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we are so privileged to be speaking with Derek Pietz. Derek is the Director of Automation Equipment and Test Engineering at Intuitive, a trailblazing company at the forefront of robotic-assisted surgery. Prior to his role at Intuitive, Derek has been a part of 4 startup ventures, including one as a co-founder. He's built and led engineering and operations teams, designed machines, run a P&L, pitched investors, obsessed over supply chain, developed sales strategies, taught robots to make pizza, and fixed customer problems. Derek, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Aaron.
All right. So what made you decide to become an engineer?
I think it was largely to keep some nosy family members out of my business. I felt like people started asking me what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was too young to have a good context to answer that question. And at some point I said, I'll be an engineer. And then everybody was good with that answer from then on. I suppose maybe in parallel to that, I really wanted to be an inventor as well. I didn't actually know what that meant when I came up with that idea, but turns out engineers do that too.
Yeah, engineers make very good inventors. So even at a young age, did you really understand what an engineer was?
No idea. I don't think I fully understood it when I got to undergraduate, what it really entailed, what the job really entailed. I know people, in the movies they did it. They wore short sleeve white shirts and narrow ties, and seemed to they made some incredible things, but some of them had some pretty rough time at work, and I didn't. But learned on the job, I guess.
That's interesting. What would Derek today tell Derek 15, 20 years ago that you wish you had known about engineering back then?
I think I wish I had known just how broad and impactful of a career path it can potentially be. Engineers have their hands in, every aspect of modern society, from entertainment to healthcare to transportation and everything else that we could imagine in between. And I think if I had known that, and if other people thinking about what they want to do when they grow up had known that, I think it'd be a lot more people be interested in doing this.
Yeah, I think in a very literal way, engineers are the people who make the world function the way that it does. And I think that we are the unsung heroes of the world. I'm certainly very proud to be an engineer myself. And I know you are as well. And you've been a part of several startups, one of which you co-founded. Can you tell us a little bit, what was the path that led you there? And what did the company do?
Yeah, so I thought about, I was interested in starting a company from, maybe in high school. I ran a bike repair business out of my parents' garage when I was 15. It was probably my first job. And so it kind of an interest in entrepreneurial pursuits pretty young. And had started to get this idea that maybe some sort of engineering consulting company would be a fun thing to do. Now I got to college, a friend of mine and I started kicking around some different ideas of what we might actually go after. Nothing really gelled up for quite a few years until I was working at my first startup at Cylindra, and just really enjoying taking a new technology to market, and thought could you come up with a business that did this? where like instead of taking one awesome idea to market every couple of years, could you do this professionally and have several per year that you could help launch? And so partner and I decided that was an awesome idea. We got after it. We founded L2F, which stood for Lab to Fab, or Laboratory to Fabrication. And our goal was really to help hardware innovators accelerate to market more quickly. And what that was in the early stages was engineering consulting and custom equipment design. But we pretty quickly began to realize that automation, and in particular robot-centric automation, was where our market was the best, where our strategy could work, and where there was the absolute greatest need for that type of work. Especially, we're Silicon Valley based. There was not a ton of manufacturing done in California for the last couple of decades, and that meant there were even fewer automation companies that were there to provide the custom equipment solutions. And so latched onto the fact that, hey, there's this gap. There's a renewed interest in local manufacturing and in reshoring, and there's no one to build the machines to do it. Let's go for it. And had a contract fall in our lap, and went hard after that. It was a good start.
Amazing. So hindsight is always 20/20. If you could change one thing about how you managed that company, what would it be?
Yeah. We were really focused on growth, which was a good plan, and led us into some really awesome projects. But we got a little out of control along the way. And in kind of every aspect we could, we didn't manage finances as tightly as we could. We didn't manage our sales pipeline as tightly as we could. We weren't choosy enough about the projects that we would take on. We thought because we had this great sort of like workflow that we use for taking a project from start to finish, that it meant we could do anything in any industry. And it turned out there was just enough nuance between automotive and pharmaceuticals and food manufacturing and all the other crazy stuff that we had our hands in, that we weren't really world class at any of it. And it wasn't until some, really emotionally trying pivots partway through that we trimmed that down and found food automation, food service automation in particular, was what we were the most passionate about and the most successful at. And that's really when the company was able to be truly successful.
You mentioned some emotionally trying situations. If you don't want to talk about it, that's completely fine. But I sense that there might be an interesting story there that people could learn from. Is there anything about that time that you're comfortable sharing? Yeah.
You're a co-founder or founder yourself. I'm sure you've had some of these weeks, but let me just tell you about one week that we had, and it really sums up the whole startup experience, I think. So we finally got around to forming up our board of directors. We had our first board of director meeting on Monday, and we showed them our whole plan and our financials and how we're going to grow the business, different things we're going to get into. The board says, can you guys step out for a minute? We're going to talk. Turns out when a board asks you to do that, that's a bad sign. We come back in and they say, okay, you guys are almost out of money. And if you continue on your path, you're going to be broke in 10 weeks. So you need to go fire 75% of your staff and report back in 2 weeks how you're going to do it. Like, okay, we were not expecting that. So we start licking our wounds from that. They also told us, you guys need to focus. You need to get down to just one thing that you're really going to do well. The outcome of that was how we made the decision to go all in on food service automation, but we'll get to that. So that's Monday. Tuesday, we get a letter in the mail that we made the Inc. 500. Not only did we make the Inc. 500, but we were the second place engineering firm in the United States. We were number 237 on the list with 1,300% 3-year growth rate.
Wow.
Wow. What an honor. That's pretty great. So we're back top of the world. Wednesday, we get a letter from our largest customer that one of our projects that's been struggling has been rejected and that we owe them $1 million.
Oh.
So if you think back to Monday, we do not have $1 million. So like, okay, we're back in the dumps again. On Thursday, this guy shows up, looking to, meet some people in the area, looking for some, maybe collaborators. He wants to grow his presence, and he owns an integrator in China, and he's looking for, some U.S. friends to make. And this is one of those moments where my partner and I were just absolutely on the same wavelength and like could have said the same thing at the same moment. We stepped out of the room, looked each other in the eyes, like, let's go ask this guy for $1 million right now. And so we go back in there. We tell him, like, look, we're not looking for friends. We're looking for a strategic investor. If you want to invest at least 7 figures, then we want to talk more. Otherwise, great to meet you. Have a great day. And he leans back and he says, I'll come back tomorrow. And so one of our board members who was still in town, who was also from China, takes the guy to dinner, calls up about midnight and says, actually, he doesn't want to give you $1 million. He can give you $3 million because he wants to be an equal partner with you guys. And you guys need to come in. He's going to meet you on Sunday for breakfast. He's going to fly his CFO in from China to meet you, and you have to pitch him on Sunday morning. And so we stay up, all night for the whole weekend. We pitch him, and by like Monday afternoon, we'd shaking hands on a deal.
That is one of the most incredible stories I have ever heard. Wow.
That was a good one.
What a roller coaster of a week.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't imagine the high you must have been on at the end of that week.
It was just totally surreal. It was like walking through a dream, or like the last scene in an action film where like everything's on fire and the hero just sort of standing there looking around. I mean, that's the kind of feeling that you had going through that.
Wow. Now, other than you being on the same wavelength as your partner and asking for the money, was there anything else you think you had done or prepared or even things you had done to facilitate maybe the luck of this guy finding you, or was it just completely happenstance?
There's probably 2 things there. One, there were not a lot of integrators our size in Silicon Valley by that point. We were like 35 people. We were quite capable. We had a really prestigious customer list. We had Apple and Tesla and SpaceX and companies like that on our marquee. And my partner is just the most incredible networker you've ever met. He's a connector to his core to a level that I've never seen one like it.
Fantastic! Wow, I just love that story so much. I feel like you could write a book just around that one week.
Maybe.
Well, you co-founded this company, of course, and in my own experience, founding a company often comes along with a lot of work, a lot of time that gets spent. Was there a time during that period when you had to prioritize your career over your personal life? And how did you navigate that decision? What impact did it have on your personal side of things?
Absolutely. I don't think you get anything off the ground without having to put in some hours. And certainly our moment was my partner landed us an opportunity, again, because he's the world's greatest connector, that we had the opportunity to take on a project for Apple that 2 previous companies had already failed at. And the thing was, the timeline was just bonkers. It was to take 2 robots from purchase order to shipped. We need to be done in 7 weeks.
Wow.
And
that's aggressive.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this is a company that is currently myself, Sean, and 1 controls engineer. And a couple of contractors. And we had like a little rented space with no heat, no air conditioning whatsoever. It was freezing that winter. But anyway, it's like we went for it. We landed it. And the 2 of us and our 1 employee did 100 hours a week for those 6 weeks in a row, slept in the office more than once during that period of time.
Wow.
And managed to do it. And we got the thing out. It was actually hilarious. We slept in the office one night, or I guess me and Sean slept there the 3rd day in a row. And the customer shows up, the project manager from Apple comes in, and here's Sean putting on his shoes in our lobby. So like this couch in the lobby, that's where we'd slept. He comes in and is like, did you sleep here? It's like, do you need a minute to like, I don't get ready to comb your hair or whatever? So he was coming in for factory acceptance test.
Deodorant on before we talk?
Yeah. So he comes in for factory acceptance test, and we nailed that, and machine was out. But because it was a time and material project, we put in all those hours, we racked up a bucket of cash. And so we flew the machines to China, got them installed, more 100 hours weeks there. We come back and we had this pile of money. We'd also, demonstrated to this one investor that was really interested in, the board member I mentioned later on ended up investing at that point. They're like, wow, these guys are really serious. They can really pull this stuff, cut the stuff off. And that generated enough money that we were able to go hire 5 more people. And once we had, a team of 10, we could get a very different set of projects than the team of 3. And then once you had that set of projects and that type of customers, well, now you could get even bigger, better projects. And so then we got to 25 people, and we were a 25-person company. You get completely different projects than when you're a 10-person company. So it really, had we not done that, it never would have happened.
The 100-hour weeks, I'm sure, were a sacrifice. Were there any other sacrifices that you made during that time, especially during the earlier days of the company, you can think of that ended up being really essential to the long-term success of the company? And maybe even a more interesting question, were there any sacrifices that you made that you thought were essential at the time that turned out to really not be that important?
Oh, man. Hard to say what was and wasn't important at any given time. I mean, there were some that were certainly uncomfortable. I mean, there were a couple of times of needing to wake up the wife in the middle of the night to find the checkbook so we could make payroll. That was never fun, but was critical to get it done. Things that maybe didn't turn out to be so important. I'm sure we probably could have figured out how to delegate more along the way, or been made a few better hires along the way that would have made a difference overall. But I don't know, would it have been materially different over that entire period of time? Probably not. It's just going to take a certain degree of challenge and sacrifice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on from the startup a little bit, you've been doing engineering for a long time. What are one or two things that you have seen commonly slow down the speed of engineering?
Yeah, I'd say one of the key ones is where people actually think they're going fast by skipping certain steps, but they're actually slowing down because they end up getting in a situation where they built the wrong thing, or they need to rework a lot of things because they skipped certain steps. Number one, persistently bad at requirements. Every company I've ever been at really has struggled with requirements up front. And that's not, it's not always possible to develop really good requirements for a project up front, but you still have to try. You have to do your best to write down what you know. And even if your spec sheet is full of guesses, that's fine. But you have to put a value in there and then write down that it's a guess. And along the course of the project, this is actually something that L2F specialized in, was we sold a lot of people their first robot. And if you've never bought a robot before, you have no idea how to write a user requirements document for that robot. And so rather than have you write one that just wasn't very good, we would do that. And so we interviewed the customer, and we had to make a lot of assumptions about what they were asking and the business problems they're really trying to solve. But what we were good at doing is, over the course of the design phase, we would converge our requirements and our design so that by the time we actually were ready to buy the machine, they'd synced up pretty well. And so by the time we were doing factory acceptance testing, we're usually on the same page with our customer, and that tended to go a lot smoother. So you can't skip that upfront step. You do want to write out your architecture a little bit. You do want to have sort of like a high level concept plan, and then, measure to that plan and execute against it. And if you've got guesses, don't be afraid to guess. Just make sure you revise those along the way.
Yeah, our engineering manager likes to say, when you need to go fast, slow down.
Yeah.
Can you think of a story that you can share that illustrates one way in which you've been able to accelerate the speed of engineering, whether it's your own work directly or someone on one of your teams?
Thoughtful teamwork is, I'd say, the key to absolutely maximizing your schedule. So you You do that requirements work in the beginning. You take the next step of break up the system into whatever, break all the work streams into the different subcomponents. Get someone who fully and completely owns that work stream, assigned to each one. Just the right number of people. Too many people can slow down a project. Too few people can slow down a project. And make sure that someone is ultimately responsible for the overall success of the program. Someone that is going to coordinate all those people together. And then if they're on the same page for requirements and they have complete ownership of what they're going to be doing, you can just let them go.
Yeah. Well, let me take a very short break here and share with everyone that our company, Pipeline Design and Engineering, develops new and innovative manufacturing processes for complex products, then implements them into manual fixtures or fully automated machines to dramatically reduce production costs and improve production yields for OEMs. We're speaking with Derek Pietz today. So Derek, you are currently the Director of Automation Equipment and Test Engineering at Intuitive. Can you share a little bit about what Intuitive does? What are the core products that Intuitive sells and what are they best known for?
Yeah, absolutely. So Intuitive is best known for the Da Vinci surgical system, which is a 4-arm surgeon-guided robot that can perform laparoscopic surgery. And that's been in the market about 20 years. And Intuitive is really the pioneer of robotic-assisted surgery. Da Vinci did 2.2 million cases last year. And is by far the broadest accepted surgical platform, robotic surgical platform on the market today. My work specifically is in a upstart business unit within Intuitive, as the ION business unit. And our platform is intended to provide access to the outer extremity of the lung so that we can perform primarily biopsies today is what the device is used for.
I was actually at Intuitive a few weeks ago, and I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to drive one of these Da Vinci systems, and it was one of the most incredible experiences that I've had in recent memory. There's this really neat, I call it the command center. I'm sure there's a more formal name that you all use for it, but command center where the surgeon sits down and looks into kind of it almost feels like the old days photography where the photographer would kind of throw a hood over his head. There is no hood, but it's that kind of dark cave that you look into, and there's a screen in there, high definition screen, and then these little controllers that you grab with your hands, almost like video game controllers, similar anyway. And you begin to manipulate these controllers, and it is like a miracle watching what you're doing with your hands appear on the screen, which is giving you an image of a remote robot that is mirroring the manipulations, the movements that you're making with your hand. So in my case, the robot was just 4 or 5 feet away, but in theory, you could be in a separate room even, and the robot would be doing exactly what is you're doing. And it was the most just kind of uncanny, surreal sensation to watch this happen and see what fine motor control I could command through this little controller, this hand controller. The first time that you got to drive one of these, Derek, did you have a similar experience?
Thankfully, yes, because the general manager of the ION unit had me test drive the ION robot during my interview. I thought, oh man,
brilliant.
If this doesn't go well, this is not going to look good for me. I'm not much of a gamer, so I'm kind of slow to technology pickup. And thankfully, it's just super easy. The ION robot the UI is a deconstructed mouse. You've got a wheel to roll forward. You've got a ball to aim. And that's it. You just go for it.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've encountered in designing and engineering equipment for robotic surgery systems like Da Vinci?
Yeah, for us, there's a really huge variety of equipment used to make the instruments that we do. And it ranges from, in some cases, requiring extremely precise motion for aligning things to thermal processing, to volume part manufacturing and very difficult process qualifications. Which is really why I like it so much, is there's this tremendous variety of equipment that we design. No two pieces is exactly the same. No two problems are exactly the same. And so we just really get to play with a lot of different things.
It's a candy store for engineers, right? We love solving problems, and new problems are fun.
Absolutely. And what I particularly love about what I'm doing in my current role is Ion being sort of in startup mode. We're scaling very quickly. My team designs the equipment, writes the software for it, introduces it to production, and then once successful, we get to reproduce it at scale for our operations in other factories.
Nice. What a rewarding role that must be.
Yeah, it's kind of like going back to like the highest growth days of L2F, but minus the cash flow problem.
Yeah, from what I hear, Intuitive is growing quite rapidly. With such an incredible product, I'm not surprised. Well, are there any trends or patterns that you've seen, say over the past few years in the automation industry? What do you think is going to change or continue or stop in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think we're going to see an increasing impact from AI-powered vision-guided robots. And the vision guidance is going to be incredibly impactful for inspection applications, for robot guidance, for any number of things. In past life, Covariant, we specialize in item picking for the logistics industry, and what the massive variety of items that they're able to pick and handle, all off of the generalized model, is just unbelievable. And technologies like that in their infancy today, just starting to see real traction in several markets. That's going to be a game changer in the variety of applications that robots are able to thrive.
Yeah. I saw there's a company called Micropsy out there. I think they're a newer company, and they have an interesting product. It's robotic motion controlled with AI, and there's no programming language for this robot. You literally show it what you want it to do, and then it does that thing, which is really cool. And they were doing something like placing a screwdriver on a hook, something like that. So they would place this screwdriver on a hook, and I think there was some little tab with a hole in it so you could hang the screwdriver off this hook. And the robot would watch that through a motion or a camera, a vision system. And then you'd put the screwdriver down, and it would pick it up, and it would put it on that hook. And even if you move that hook, it would find the hook, and it would still place it on. And even if you were moving the hook as it was trying to find the hook, it would adjust to wherever you're moving it dynamically and still put the screwdriver on the hook, all without any real programming, just showing it what to do, and then it understanding what the goal was and executing. Really, really cool stuff. Like you said, this stuff is all still in its infancy, but wow, 5-10 years from now, I can't even imagine how sophisticated that will become.
Yeah, that's incredible.
You've already shared some really incredible stories. Thinking back across your career, can you think of a success story and a failure, and ideally, something that we can all learn something from?
Well, I'd say the first project that I got my hands on when I joined Covariant was a really interesting one. Very aggressive timeline, team that had to be sort of rebuilt along the way, where there'd been a little bit of attrition recently. They were a little, down in the dumps from being beat up in the previous, one or two projects before that hadn't gone as well as they could when I took over the team there. And so, I had a bit of a morale issue on my hands, in addition to a hard project to solve.
Yeah.
And to be able to get that back on track and get that team like really aligned and organized and motivated and focused on the right things and able to deliver something that they really didn't think they could do was like incredibly awesome. They pulled together, they got it built, and got it out, and very, very happy with the result.
What were some things that you did to improve the morale?
I like to think that one thing I'm pretty good at is scrounging for resources. And so I'll beg, borrow, and steal whatever I need within an organization to help the team out. So I was able to scare up a few headcounts, shake loose a little extra money, pull in a few people from another team that were really good at things, both one or two people are on loan, plus one that was able to transfer to our team. And then at the same time, leveraged the community of great contractors and distributors and integrators that I knew to be able to augment the team and show that, hey, if we just fill a couple of these key skill sets, we can actually do this. And let's get really focused. Let's protect you from all the other distractions within the organization so you can deliver this really hard thing that they ask you to do. And you guys are plenty smart. You're plenty motivated. You can do it if you just focus on these couple of things.
Terrific. How about that? Maybe we should have reversed the order so we ended on a positive note, but can you think of a failure in your career and what you learned from it?
I feel like I probably keep bumping into the same lesson over and over, and maybe haven't learned it all the way. And without hitting on a specific failure, like don't overcomplicate things, and don't assume that just because the team's often busy with something that they really have it. You have to stay engaged with them, check in with them, check what their current maturity level on that project is. Do they really understand the requirements? Do they really understand the technologies that we're using? Do they have the resources? Are they asking the right questions? And just, help them understand when they're stuck and help them get unstuck along the way. And I'd say that's true for engineering teams. It's true for operations teams. That's also true at home, with, the kids, on their homework or their chores or, any new thing that you might be trying to get someone to help you out on.
It sounds like that comes down in large part to communication. Is that accurate? Yeah. That communication gets you every time.
Yeah. I saw your podcast on, I listened to one, with, Michaela. And that was really what made me want to come on the show and talk to you a little bit more. I even shared that with Jennifer, my wife, and I think she's off writing a flow chart now for how to troubleshoot things. So.
That's hilarious that you listened to that episode. That was a lot of fun to make, and we both really enjoyed it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll have to let her know that. For those of you who don't know, that's my wife, Kayla, and I'll have to let her know that her episode convinced a great automation engineer to join the show as a guest. What advice would you give to engineers who are interested in going into automation or robotics?
Just do it. There's an incredible number of opportunities that are out there, and in doing it, like one sort of like pitfall I see people who first get into this falling into a lot is attempting to do the whole thing. The mechanical, the electrical, the software, the vision, and assuming that because they're a super bright engineer, they can. There are a lot of people who can do a lot of those things okay, but it really is a lot better to specialize in a couple of areas and then find some teammates that you really think you're going to be successful with and do it together. It's more fun too.
What's a tool that doesn't exist, but if it did, would allow engineering teams to work better, smarter, faster, 10x their productivity? And this can be something that's within the realm of known physics or something completely out there, like teleportation.
Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot, over the water cooler, if you will. And I want an AI tool that's going to check the design against whatever standard that we're trying to build it to. Maybe that's an ISO standard. Maybe that's a customer standard. Maybe it's the requirements document. Maybe it's our internal methodologies that we want to use. But I want to feed something into it and have it come up with, feed my design review deck into it and have it highlight all the areas that I didn't hit the mark, and give me a task list to go back and work on.
It's so interesting that you say that. I had not quite the same idea, but a very similar idea for a design review AI, right? Where it gets programmed or it knows some common pitfalls like, hey, there's a little bit of interference between these parts. I don't think that should be there. Or this 1024 screw is going into a 1028 threaded hole. That's not right. Things like that. I actually pitched it to an investor who summarily turned me down, but I thought it was a pretty good idea. That's an interesting twist on it, though, with the ISO standards or ANSI standards. Okay, well, let's see. We've got, I think, just one more question here, and then we'll wrap things up. Specifically within your role as an engineer, what's one thing that frustrates you and one thing that brings you joy?
I just simply love building stuff. like seeing the machine come together where you've got an empty spot in your warehouse, and then the parts start to trickle in, and then you start to see some sub-assemblies there. And, a little while later, the whole thing is built, and then you see it, robots moving slowly, and then it's moving fast, and then the customer comes in, and they're happy with it, and the thing gets shoved into the back of a truck. We've just seen that, complete and flow. It is just absolutely unbelievably fun. And what's frustrating in that same process is that the details matter so much that you might have a multi-million-dollar piece of automation waiting on one snap ring. And without that one snap ring, the thing doesn't work.
I echo what you say. I think there's something so magical about going from an intangible thought in someone's brain to this physical thing that performs meaningful work. We just not quite finished, but hit a milestone on one of the projects we're working on right now. And it's probably the largest machine we've ever built. The motion is not complex. In fact, it's very simple motion. But just today, for the first time, we got the motion running, and seeing this thing with its giant size moving around was really, really fulfilling to watch.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Derek, thank you so much for being on the show. What a delight it was to talk with you and hear some of your insights into the industry. I'm sure a lot of people are really going to appreciate everything you shared today. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, look me up on LinkedIn. Reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
No home address, huh?
Next time.
Next time. Okay. Next time. All right. Well, Derek, thank you again so much. I sure appreciate you being on the show today.
Okay, take care.
I'm Aaron Moncur, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines, and with product design, visit us at teampipeline.us. Thanks for listening.